anything that we may not have, you can present that to us at that time as well. Okay?
As long as that is
Yes.
made, and for the purpose of this hearing, what we have submitted to you is also made a part of the record, is that correct?
Yes. Mr. Oates, in connection with your investigation, do you indicate any policy violations? How do you conclude your investigation? If you can explain that to the board.
So I formulated a general list of questions, not normally beforehand because I'm not sure how the conversation will lead, but once I get with the employee, let them know why I'm there, we begin a general discussion, which obviously will open up more questions. Based on the information the employee and I discuss, I take notes and I'll write these things down, and then I'll go back and I'll look through our discipline process and the different types of infractions that are listed within our Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual. And anything that is a violation, I annotate, and I annotated that in my summary that I provided at the end of my investigation.
Does Augusta have policies specific to drug violations, drug use?
Yes, we have a substance abuse policy that is a part of our Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual. It's updated from time to time, but yes, we do have one.
And is that a terminable offense? And can you explain whether or not drug offenses would be subject to progressive discipline? Can you expound on that for the board?
Absolutely. So our Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual, or the substance abuse policy more specifically, we have a zero tolerance policy, and it says that in the 3 p.m. 3 p.m. is obviously short for Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual. And those different things that are subject to immediate termination are obviously the use of drugs, and drugs are illicit drugs, as well as misuse of prescription drugs, including alcohol. Let's see, so obviously you can't have it in your system. You can't have drugs or paraphernalia on your person. You can't transport them in city vehicles or in city facilities and so forth. It does not specifically say that you cannot facilitate the sale or exchange. However, that type of determination is completely up to the director of the department.
Now, what are the reference violations that you indicated in connection with your report that's given to the department director?
Will I be able to refer to my summary?
Or, yeah, we can.
Without reading it word for word?
I do believe this has been made a part of the record, and at this time, well, can you, I want to direct your attention to this document that is in front of you. Can you tell me what this document is?
Yeah, this is my investigation summary addressed to Anita Rookert, who's the HR director, from me.
Okay. And it's dated, is it dated November 17th, 2021?
Yes.
Okay. I do believe counsel for Mr. Bowman has a copy of this, and at this time I will be entering this into evidence as Appellee's Exhibit 2.
No objection.
No objection. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I'll tender this now. You don't have to read from it,
Okay.
so because they do have it.
Okay.
So,
From all notes.
okay. You want to go ahead?
Yeah. All right. So to address your question was there anything that I found Mr. Bowman had done to violate any of Augusta's policies? Yes, as annotated on this document. The fourth paragraph down is where it says that he did report so he did not report the request for illicit drugs to supervisory personnel within the fire department. Failure to provide information regarding unsafe acts or employees violating Augusta policy demonstrates disregard for or willful failure to follow the written instructions of a directive of a supervisor or higher authority. In this case, the higher authority is the Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual, Chapter 10, Section 1000.014, Paragraph B. And this, of course, is a direct violation of Augusta policy, insubordination infraction 1. Because he failed to report the request for drugs, I determined that to be a violation. of the Augusta policy and neglect of duty, ND 11, in that he was willful and negligent violation of a safety policy or procedure which resulted in property, equipment damage, or personal injury. And then the last one that I had found was that his failure to report the illicit drugs by a fellow employee which resulted in an overdose is gross misconduct to include but not limited to physical violence or engaging in offensive conduct or language toward the public, supervisor, personnel, fellow employees. And that was a direct violation of Augusta policy ethics violation 15 EV 15.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes my questions for now. Counsel for Mr. Bowman
Counsel?
may have questions of the board. Okay.
Yeah,
On direct examination, you stated that the Augusta policy and procedures does not specifically say you can't facilitate the sale or exchange of drugs. Is that correct?
It does not specifically say it, but there are various types of infractions that the policy will not list specifically because, let's face it, there are entirely too many wrongdoings to annotate in writing.
Ms. Jeffers, if you can stand by the.
it's real hard to, we're in these bubbles and it's just, it's very difficult for us to hear.
That's okay. But you did state that there are some policies that are immediately, offenses that you can be terminated immediately, which would be the use of drugs, right?
Yes.
Can't have drugs on you, right?
Right.
And so none of that is occurring in this particular case with Mr. Bowman, correct?
No.
Okay, because he took his drug test and didn't have drugs in his system. You didn't find any drugs on him, correct?
Correct.
And the only thing he did was respond to a request for Miss Rabaza. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Miss Rabaza was not working at the time that that request was sent. Is that correct?
Working is irrelevant. She was on Augusta payroll, so she was an Augusta employee.
Okay, but I'm asking you a question specifically. She was not working and was actually on leave or at this time. Is that correct?
Yes, she was on the payroll and she was at home for an amount of time due to a work-related injury.
Did she ever come back from work?
Not that I know of, but I'm not in her department, so I can't speak intelligently on that.
Okay, so nothing, she wasn't at work, she was on leave from work, and you don't know whether or not she ever even came back as an employee.
Correct.
Okay, and so when she overdosed, she did not overdose based upon anything that had to do with weed, is that correct?
Well, as far as I know, yes.
Okay, so when you say that he facilitated a deal or something like that, there's no communication before or after he sent that number to her, is that correct?
Oh, yeah, there was plenty of communication before and after. I don't know. I focused in on the facts that I was looking for at the time, and at this point, it had to do with drugs. And
But wait a minute, you're not answering my question. Was there anything other than the text that you're giving to this board today to suggest that he did anything further than give her the name at her request of a person?
no, that's all I know of.
Okay, so there was no meeting up to do a drug deal, correct?
Not in the text that I seen.
There was nothing where he said, and let me go and have you meet with this person, correct?
No.
Okay, and in fact, you don't even know if she ever called the person, talked to the person, or if any drug deal ever occurred for that weed. Is that right?
I don't need to know that.
Okay, but is that yes or no?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so he didn't actually facilitate a drug deal at all, did he?
Yes, he did.
He gave her a number at her request.
Yes.
Okay, and none of this took place during the time that she was working.
No.
Okay,
However,
all right.
our Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual does not differentiate between a person being on admin leave, workers' comp, or anything else. It specifically says employees. And regardless, if you're at home on a work-related injury, you are an employee and you cannot at all do drugs. And if you are facilitated the purchase of drugs, well, that's an issue.
Okay, and so when you charged him with these 5 violations, I just want to ask you, IN1, when you say willful failure to follow the written instruction or direction of a supervisor or higher authority, the only thing you're referring to is this policies and procedures. Is that correct? The manual?
Right.
Okay, so there was nothing that he disobeyed a direct order, correct?
Well, our Augusta policy is a set of guidelines and rules that we abide by, and he failed to meet those rules. So, yeah, he violated the policy.
Okay, but a direct order would be you cannot be under the influence of drugs. Is that correct?
Do I really have to go and see 2,500 city employees and tell each one specifically not to do drugs or facilitate the sale?
Mr.
No,
Let's
that's
just answer the
ridiculous.
question, yes or no. The direct order from these policies and procedures is that you're not to have drugs or use drugs, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so let's go to ND 11. Willful or negligent violation of a safety policy which results in property, equipment damage, or personal injury. How did his text in any way result in personal injury to equipment or damage?
So when he was asked for the contact of a weed man, instead of reporting it to supervisor personnel who could have made sure that that employee had the ability to seek substance abuse counseling, which didn't happen because he didn't report it, well, then she could have, and obviously did, continue using drugs and ultimately resulting in an overdose. Therefore, his lack to report it did not give the supervisor personnel the ability to make sure that she was remaining safe. So that's a direct indication of his personality or ethics.
Did she overdose on weed?
That's not the point.
No, that is the point.
She
How?
didn't have the opportunity to go into her supervisors to make sure that she was being taken care of. So it doesn't matter if it's weed or if she's abusing a prescription medicine. All right, because obviously that's also part of the substance abuse policy. Had the supervisor personnel had the knowledge of, then they would have had the ability to recommend her to our employee assistance program, which they couldn't do because they weren't aware. He had the opportunity to take care of a fellow employee and failed to do that.
So are you saying that her personal injury was directly related to him sending her the name of Tony?
Can you repeat that?
Are you trying to say that her overdosing was directly related to him sending the name of Tony with regard to weed?
What I'm saying is anytime an employee is
That's
given
just yes or
access
no.
to an illicit drug, then yes, I do.
Okay, you're going to say yes, but she did not overdose on weed, and you don't even know if she facilitated a drug deal about weed, do you?
No.
Okay, let's go to number EV10. Engaging in any employment activity or enterprise which is illegal, incompatible, or in technical conflict with the employee's duties and responsibilities as Augusta, Georgia employee. You put that as one of his violations. He's not charged with any crime, is he?
This is internal for work, not a crime. I'm not a cop. I say that he violated Augusta policy, not a criminal law.
Okay, well, the question is, which is illegal? Is he charged with a crime? Yes or no?
I don't know.
Okay, so we don't have anything that was actually illegal.
It was against Augusta policy, and that's why I'm here to discuss Augusta policy.
Okay, well, that's it. I just want to go from EV10 and move on. Number EV15, gross misconduct to include but not limited to physical violence, threats of physical violence, or engaging in offensive conduct or language towards the public, supervisory personnel, or fellow employees. Was there any physical and violence involved in this case at all?
Gross misconduct to include.
Sir, Mr. Oates, can you just answer yes or no for the record? Was there any physical violence involved in this case at all?
Well, what you're giving me isn't the entire definition of what you just read, is it?
I know, but I'm asking you one at a time. We're going to go through it. Physical violence, is that involved in this
No.
case at all? Okay. Threats of physical violence or engaging in offensive conduct or language toward the public, is that involved in this case at all?
Not directly.
Okay. Or against supervisory personnel or fellow employees, yes or no?
Not directly.
Okay. So when you sent your actual letter to the director with all of these violations, the reality is there was nothing to support EV15, correct?
No, actually, that's incorrect.
Okay, well,
I said not directly to the previous question you asked about it, but yes, there is a link.
Okay, and so your link is what?
For EV15 specifically,
Sounds to me like none of these are actually directly violations, is that correct?
well, no, that's your opinion because it seems to you, right? Not it seems to me, and I was the investigator. So yeah, because he failed to report it, it put his fellow coworker at a disadvantage, which could obviously result in some sort of personal injury. Not to mention the line of work they do. They're first responders, they're lifesavers. So I would assume that an employee being in a fire department who is tasked with saving a life, showing up possibly under the influence of cocaine or meth or marijuana or alcohol could impair their ability to do their jobs effectively. Okay, so, and I have to look at this as an outside the box kind of thinker. Okay, so that Augusta is never looked at in a negative light. I do not want to have an employee find a loophole in our policy system, in our policy programs, to where they could possibly be in a situation to where Augusta could be liable for somebody's death in an emergency situation because the employee's under the influence.
I'm just going to object because that's really not responsive to the question, but
Like I
let you
said-
go on, Mr. Oates. You're
I'm
making
gonna
a link
object.
to the
Can we move
violation.
on? I'm going to object to this line of
The
questioning because
the question's been answered. We're going to, let's move forward. Thank you.
You don't, but you're just saying you don't want him to find a loophole out of this,
asked
is
and
that correct?
answered. Asked and answered.
Okay. And in your experience as the interim risk manager, you concluded in this investigation, was anybody else terminated based upon,
Objection relevancy.
well, it goes to the policies and procedures and the violations in the case that they're saying that there's progressive discipline and how you treat other people similarly situated in the same circumstances is something that's relevant for the board to consider as part of those rules. That's why I'm asking that question.
What was your question again?
The question for that was, you did an investigation with regard to Ms. Rabaza's situation.
I'm going to object to you mentioning this employee's name. We discussed this because of privacy. You don't want people knowing the name.
I will
We've
uphold,
discussed-
I'll uphold the objection on the, if you could rephrase the question,
Yes.
rephrase the question.
With regard to your investigation into the overdose of this employee, were there other people who were suspected of being involved in different capacities in this same situation who were not terminated?
That I don't know about. My job is to report my findings, and any type of disciplinary action per employee is completely up to the department director and HR personnel.
Did you recommend that anybody else be terminated who had text messages in the phone with her?
I did not recommend that Mr. Bowman be terminated. What I said was, I hope this information is helpful in decisions that you need to be made. So I don't make recommendations.
So are there other statements that were involved in your investigation of this entire incident that I do not have, other than this one?
Regarding Mr. Bowman,
No, just the entire investigation, because my Freedom of Information request asked for statements from the investigation. Are there more statements with regard to this investigation that I don't have?
I don't know what you have.
Okay. Well, do you know whether there are more statements than just Mr. Bowman's and this paper?
I have a statement from Mr. Bowman for Mr. Bowman's specific investigation,
Okay, and you have statements from other people as well?
for their individual investigations, yeah.
Okay, that involved this particular lady in this incident?
Not Mr. Bowman.
No, I'm not talking about Mr. Bowman, but the
course.
investigation,
Yes.
period. Okay, so there are statements we don't have,
Not for Mr. Bowman.
but for other people who were involved.
I'm going to object to that line of questioning as he does not know what your specific request it was. So that's an unfair question for him. He can't answer that question.
You did a thorough investigation and it involved other people, is that correct?
What was I gonna do?
Mr. Oates?
I'm going to object to relevancy.
Now, this goes to counsel, if,
And I believe he answered that question earlier. You asked him whether or not there were other people interviewed or reports done. He answered that question.
And that was a yes?
He answered your question earlier.
Okay, well, maybe I need to clarify, was
Asked
that
and
a yes?
answered.
Was that a yes?
Asked and answered.
And was the answer yes for the record?
I don't know. The record will speak for itself, but I know you asked him the question earlier.
Can we just ask him to answer yes or no?
yeah, would you just answer that question, yes or no, please, for the record?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Move forward.
I have no further questions of Mr. Oates, thank you.
All right. Counsel, you have anything to redirect for Mr. Oates?
Not at this time.
All right.
The board.
Does anybody on the board have a question for Mr. Oates before we allow him to he can be excused? Anyone? All right. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Take care.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Stay here,
Yes, yes.
and I can take this one.
Oh, this is yours?
It's all part of that.
Okay, yeah, I'll keep it.
Okay.
If you need it, I'll make copies of it
fine, I
later.
got it.
Okay, all right, have a good day. At this time, appellees will call Chief Antonio Burden.
morning, Chief.
Good morning.
Before you begin testimony, I'm going to swear you in. If you can please raise your right hand. Do you swear and or affirm that the information you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Will you please state your full name for the record?
Antonio Burden.
And please state your occupation and name of your employer, please.
Augusta Fire Department, I am the fire chief and EMA director.
Okay. And how long have you worked in the capacity of fire chief?
It will be, in 2 weeks, it will be 1 year.
And as fire chief, and we're going to discuss fire chief, what are your primary duties and responsibilities, sir?
As fire chief, I am responsible for upholding the mission of the fire department and ensuring that we are responsive to the needs of our community.
Now, sir, I'm going to direct your attention to the reason why we're here today. Are you familiar with Mr. Shahan Bowman?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you have how did you become familiar with Mr. Bowman?
I became specifically familiar with Mr. Bowman as a result of the investigation.
And did you terminate Mr. Bowman?
Yes, that was the recommendation, yes.
And can you tell this board the reason why you terminated Mr. Bowman?
Sure. So, as you're aware, there was an independent investigation that took place outside of the fire department. And as a result of that independent investigation, which Mr. Bowman was a part of, we came to that decision.
I'm going to talk about, are there specific fire department policies that were referenced in connection with his termination, or policies specific to all Augusta employees? Can you tell this board the specific policy violations for which you terminated Mr. Bowman?
So the fire department has independent policies and procedures that are for the fire department. But all of those policies and procedures run congruently with the policies and procedures of the city of Augusta.
I'm going to stop my line of questioning here. Mr. Bowman's attorney will have a number of questions for you.
Sure.
Hi, Mr. Burton.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, how are you? And welcome to the city. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you before.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you came on approximately a year ago. Was it after the incident had already occurred?
The investigation to the incident, no.
Okay, so when you came on, the investigation was going on?
No. The investigation, I believe, began in November.
Okay, and when did you start?
I started in July of last year.
All right, and so you had no other prior disciplinary issues with Mr. Bowman prior to this investigation, correct?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, and whose job did you replace?
I believe the position was, we had an interim fire chief,
And who was that?
Chief Williams.
Okay. And did he resign from that position?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry.
Objection relevancy.
I'm just asking. Did he resign?
Relevancy. We're going to object to relevancy.
Okay.
We're not going to discuss disciplinary matters concerning other employees.
Okay. who was Mr. Bowman's supervisor at the time that you terminated him?
If you don't know, you can.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure who his station officer was.
Okay, did you at any time discuss with his supervisor or submit your letter of termination to his supervisor prior to giving him his notice of termination?
So in the fire department, we have different ranks. They start at firefighter, they move up to sergeant, lieutenant, and then a captain. And so matters of disciplinary actions would not involve a subordinate of mine.
Okay, so you did not notify Captain Wisnat or anybody of your termination of him?
No,
Okay. Did you at any time, under the rules, notify him of your pending disciplinary action prior to giving him his termination letter, letting him know that you were thinking about it?
I did meet with Mr. Bowman, yes.
But at the time that you met with him, you handed him his termination letter, correct?
Following our conversation, yes.
Okay, so you did not do a notice of pending disciplinary action consistent with 300013 for termination?
I'm going to object to the form of the questioning.
Let me rephrase the question. Did you do a notice of pending disciplinary action before you gave Mr. Bowman his termination letter? And he let him answer the question.
If you can answer the
can
question. If you can.
No, I met with Mr. Bowman following that conversation.
question.
Following that conversation, it was then determined the action that was taken.
Okay. And you handed him the termination letter, right?
Correct.
Okay. So you had made up your mind before you ever met with him?
Once again, I met with Mr. Bowman, and during that conversation, Mr. Bowman corroborated and substantiated the allegation. And pending the outcome of that conversation, a decision was made.
Okay. And what date did you issue that termination to him? Do you recall?
April 18th, 2022, I'm sorry.
Okay. And may I approach, because there's a document you have, his statement. That statement with Mr. Bowman that he signed, what date is that?
November 16th is a period that's written on the
November 16th of what?
2021,
Okay, and you terminated him April 18th of 2022.
correct.
Okay. And so you were aware, and the people were aware of that statement and that conduct as far back as November of 2021?
No, ma'am. So there was an investigation. That investigation, there was actually two investigations. Following the outcome of both of those investigations, the department then took action.
Okay. And he continued to work that whole time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But you were aware that he had sent the text, and the investigation had revealed that he had sent the text as of November of 2021?
No, ma'am.
His signature is right there on that paper.
Yes, ma'am, but that was all a part of that investigation, and that, as I understand it, was made aware that that wasn't completed in November.
Okay. But we were aware of his actions for which he's terminated today as of November of 2021.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Never mind. We're fine.
Okay.
No further questions.
Counselor,
I
you
have
have
no
anything?
further questions. The board may have questions. I think
Yeah.
you all understand what happened.
Exactly. Mr. Chief, I got one. When did the investigation, you may or may not know this, when did the investigation, because there were two done, when did it actually wrap up?
So the first investigation, believe was completed around January or
Right.
February.
Okay.
But then the next investigation started.
Okay. And so that next investigation, did it wrap up in April or did it wrap up prior to
I
that?
believe around the 1st of April.
Okay. So,
End of March.
right. Okay. So,
And Mr. Chairman, if I can ask
Yeah.
a question, and this may clarify.
go ahead.
Chief, there were two.
Your Honor, I would object.
Were there two departments investigating?
I just object to, that she's a lawyer now, she'd have to answer this through the questions through her witness. He can respond to your questions, but she would not, as legal counsel, be able to do that. I would.
No, you
Was-
can redirect.
well-
If you need to redirect,
Yeah, I'll redirect him then,
Just
just for
redirect.
clarification.
just redirect. So go ahead. So, so when did you didn't initiate, did you initiate any of those? You weren't the chief at the time, I don't think. You didn't initiate those.
The investigations?
Correct.
They were initiated by HR.
Okay, all right. Counsel, do you want to redirect?
Chief, were there two departments conducting investigations at the same time, to your knowledge?
I believe they were not at the same time. I believe risk management conducted their investigation first, and then the second investigation was conducted following the first one.
That concludes my questions for the chief.
Counsel, you got anything?
Yes, as a result of those investigations, what you found for Mr. Bowman was that he had given her that phone number to Todd.
Correct. As a result of the investigation, it was determined and substantiated that Mr. Bowman was complicit in the sale of illegal drugs, marijuana to be specific.
Okay. Wait a minute. Did he actually meet with her or meet with anybody to say for her to go and buy drugs or do anything?
Well, once again, I wasn't a part of that investigation, but in the outcome of that investigation, it stated that Mr. Bowman acknowledged that
Send a text message.
well, in the investigation, once again, it stated that Mr. Bowman acknowledged being complicit in the sale of illegal drugs. And in my meeting with Mr. Bowman, once again, he did confirm and acknowledge being complicit in the sale of illegal drugs.
Do you know if this lady bought any illegal drugs or weed based upon that text?
I'm not sure if any investigation, police investigation has ensued, nor did I conduct any police investigation.
Okay. But to your knowledge, in your investigation, she didn't buy any drugs or do anything or act on anything from that number, did she?
Well, once again, the investigation was completed outside of the fire department.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. Does Mr. Gilchrist still work for you?
Currently,
Objection relevancy?
It is relevant. He was part of this investigation, Mr. Gilchrist, correct?
yes,
Okay, and does he still work for you?
yes,
Okay, and what about Eric Smith? Does he still work for you?
yes,
Okay, and you brought them all in at the same time, correct? To speak with them?
no,
At the same day that you met with Mr. Bowman, you brought them in as well?
no, it may not have been the same day. It could have been the same day.
But they're still
possible.
employed there?
Pardon me?
They're still employed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
All right,
I do have some follow-up questions.
quick. Yes.
Chief Burden, did Gilchrist facilitate the sale of an illegal drug with any employee that you know of?
There was no indication of that in the investigation.
What about firefighter Smith? Did he facilitate the sale of an illegal drug?
Once again, there was no indication of that.
Okay. The decision to terminate, is that for the department director?
Yes, it is, and it's something that me as director do not take lightly.
And are firefighters trained when they're in training? Are they trained in the area of drugs? And more specifically, what are they what are they trained specifically when it comes to drug use amongst employees, fellow employees?
They are trained and have to adhere to the city's drug policy.
Okay, no further questions for the chief.
I have one follow-up question.
Real quick.
Is it true that Mr. Gilchrist was found to have had sexual relations with her at the fire department?
Objection, relevancy.
By video?
That's sustained.
I cannot
Nah,
substantiate.
we're not going to get into that. Does the board have a question for the chief? Chief, thank you very much. We appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, and thank you all.
Thank you.
At this time, the appellee will call Tamara Hill.
Counselor, how many witnesses do you have? I'm just trying
This
to.
will be my last witness
Okay,
because you
perfect.
have the administrator's decision, and I know in the past you've not asked.
Right.
So if I need to call the administrator, she is on call.
Okay.
You will need to call whomever.
You can call, you have your list of witnesses, and I'm not calling her. I said, come on. Before you give testimony, I'm going to swear you in. If you can please raise your right hand. Do you swear and/or affirm that the information you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Can you please state your full name for the record?
My name is Tamara K. Hill, and I am the senior analyst for the fire department.
And in what department? You said senior analyst. What type of senior analyst are you?
Okay, so I handle all of the HR functions for all fire personnel, compensation, benefits, retirement, anything that is required. I've been with the county for over 6 years and then just moved to the fire department almost 2 years ago.
And in your capacity as the senior human resource analyst for fire, are you familiar with the employees of the fire department to include their schedules, disciplinary histories, etc.?
Yes, I'm very familiar with time and attendance, with disciplinary, anything concerning a firefighter or above an officer I would be concerned with.
You're familiar with Mr. Shahan Bowman?
Yes, I am.
And I do believe, Mr. do you know of Mr. Shahan's disciplinary record with the department? And if so, can you tell this board what his disciplinary history has been?
Yes, to my knowledge, there has been no, background of disciplinary.
Okay.
Other than, well, there was a letter of war. You want me to speak to that? Yeah.
I'm going to direct your attention to his disciplinary file. To your knowledge, were there any letters of warnings in his personnel file?
Yes, there were.
And can you tell this board how many, and if you recall the reasons for his write-ups, can you tell the board what those were?
No, it was before I got to the fire department, but I believe there was one included in the administrative appeal packet to the administrator. Shoot. So, yeah. So, appeal. Right here. Yep.
Okay.
I'm the one actually who made the packet for the administrator.
Okay, I'm going to direct your attention to a document, and if you can, let the board know what this document is.
And can I prior
will.
to her identifying, let me see it, because I
gonna-
haven't actually seen that document. Don't know.
I will do that in the process. I'm going to ask her to identify, you know the process. Go ahead, Ms. Bone, Ms. Hill.
Yes, so this is a letter
Prior
of,
to her actually testifying as to what the document is, it'd be appropriate to let me
It
see
will.
it since I don't have never seen it. I do, this is not included. I just want to note for the record, I don't have a problem, want you guys to know everything, but I did do a Freedom of Information request for all information regarding this investigation and Mr. Bowman, and I had no letter of warning in anything that I received. So I just would like a moment to look at it. I don't think it changes my objection anyways. And is this information that you guys all have back there?
This isn't part of the, I don't think it's part of our, is this part of our packet? I don't believe it is.
I don't, I'm not sure what you
Okay,
have,
I don't,
sir.
I don't think so. Mhm, yeah, right. I don't think we have it. No, yeah, I don't think we do.
I would just submit for the record that that wasn't included in any of our FOIA requests.
Noted.
Ms. Hill, if you can, tell the board what these documents are.
okay, this was, of course, prior to me getting over there, but yes, it's, the first one that I'm reading is a letter of warning. And it was from Chief Kelly, the chief of EMS, and it says, ND7, absence without approved leave, including failure to call in or report an absence to a supervisor, failure of any Augusta, Georgia rule. So the explanation, the reason why the letter of warning was given is that on the 27th November 2019, recruit Bowman, that's what he would have been called, not firefighter, because he was still attending recruit school, was observed not to be present for class, meaning he was not on duty. Upon checking, there was not a call that was made nor permission granted for the above referenced date. So, in fact, recruit Bowman at this time did not show up for recruit training, and nor did they have any record of him calling in.
Okay, and Ms. Hill, for purposes of the record, as a recruit, they are still Augusta, Georgia employees, correct?
Yes, that is true, as well as there is a recruit contract that is signed by every recruit in the class, and specifically attendance is a very important aspect.
Okay, and what is the date of that write-up?
Well, he signed it, actually. It was reviewed with him, and it was signed on December 3rd, 2019.
Okay, and what is the next document? And can you tell the date, the reference violations?
Okay, so this is another letter of warning, and again, he is in recruit training. It was given by Battalion Chief Gregory Hartshorn, and it references the 3 p.m. ND-2, inability to perform to accepted work standards. So the explanation, of course, of the incident was recruit Bowman was instructed to report to Station 18, M3 at 8 100 hours for EMT class, clinical rotation. He arrived at 0824, stating a misunderstanding of reporting time. So again, it says recruit Bowman is expected to ensure that he is aware of the correct reporting time and location for all assignments, which is also in the fire department attendance and reporting for duty policy. This was, of course, given. He signed November 1st, 2019. This one is a letter of warning. This is from Chief James Kelly. He was the chief of EMS at the time. Augusta Fire Recruit Contract. And again, this is referencing their recruit contract that they also signed. It says explanation of incident on October 28th, 2019. A cumulative report was obtained noting the above recruit average below 70%. The following test score was noted: 82, 56, 58, with an average of 65. The reason that this was given is because at the time he was having below 70. So he had two tests that were 56 he scored and a 58. And so they were concerned and wanted to coach or counsel so that upon retaking of these tests he would pass so that he could get through recruit training.
And what was the date of that incident?
It was October 28th, 2019.
And that was the day he signed off on it.
He was counseled and given a copy of this and signed on that day.
Okay, thank you. And at this time, I will enter this as appellee's exhibit. I think we're on 3.
I would just make the objection to it not being provided to us through our open records request, and him not having notice, or me having notice of that being there today, which I think is a violation of the law. But it's
Well, you know, you should have received that. I don't know what you received in your packet, but I'm almost certain it's in there.
Your objection's noted. That will be, there we go.
Also, Ms. Hill, and I'm going to show this to Bowman's counsel before I enter into record. You should have a copy of it. Ms. Hill, can you tell the board what that document is, please?
Yes. So as a new hire with the city of Augusta, whether you are in the fire department or any other department, this is part of the policies and procedure manual acknowledgement receipt, so that every employee, it's gone over in the new hire, so that they really, what it says is that they are aware of the 3 p.m. and will review, and then they acknowledge receipt of this. They know that there is the 3 p.m. where it's located, and then of course he signed, and then of course dated August 12th, 2019.
And at this time, we'll enter this as Appellee's Exhibit 4. You all may have it in your packet. Ms.
I would say admitted with no objection, and that is in the packet that I received from the Freedom of Information request, that particular document.
Yeah.
Ms. Hill, are you aware of the reason for Mr. Bowman's termination?
Yes.
Okay. And in that you put together all of this, you're familiar of the text message that Mr. Bowman acknowledged he sent. Is that correct?
Yes, I am.
And are you familiar with the date in which he provided the number to the weed dealer, to the female firefighter?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And to your knowledge, when Mr. Bowman sent that text message, was he working at the time?
Yes, in fact, Mr. Bowman's schedule for Monday, October 11th, 2021, he was scheduled a regular 24-hour shift. He, in fact, arrived at his duty station on time. He worked actually 45 minutes over that morning. He was held over. So his normal shift is 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. His ADP time shows that we gave him 45 minutes, so he did not leave the assigned duty station until 8:45 a.m.
So at the time he facilitated that exchange of a number of a drug dealer, he was on Augusta's time clock being paid.
Yes, that is correct.
Your witness.
On that same date, Miss A, the one who sent him the request for the weed, was she on Augusta time? Was she employed at that time?
Yes, she was employed at that time.
Was she at the station or working that day?
I don't have knowledge of that to answer that question.
Wasn't she on leave though?
I would have to check.
So you don't know whether or not she was on leave or working at the time, but she requested a number for a weekend.
I believe she was on leave, but again, I would have to check that in her ADP time. Yes.
Did she ever come back to work for the Augusta City Department?
Objection relevancy.
Did she ever come back to work as an employee?
Objection relevancy.
I will sustain the objection. Let's move on.
I'm going to show you what's marked as exhibit.
That's what I can see it first.
Here's a copy for you as well.
You familiar with that? This is his performance. So you can review it.
In your position, Ms. Hill, as the senior analyst, you're not Ms. Hill. Are you familiar with quarterly performance summary and improvement plans?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to. Do you know whether or not, is this an accurate representation of his quarterly performance summary and improvement plans for Mr. Bowman?
Yes.
Do you know whether he was placed on any sort of a performance improvement plan?
There is none noted in his file.
Okay, and his major performance strengths and weaknesses were works well with others, eager to learn, takes instruction well. Is that correct?
That is what the lieutenant has, yes, notated on this.
And he has no other issues with timeliness or being noted for not being at work on time or doing what he's supposed to. Is that correct?
I could not state, I could not answer that. All I can go is by what the lieutenant has here. So,
You can only go by those warnings that you saw during the time he was in recruitment. Is that correct?
you're asking me specifically for me to look at these documents and ask if they are true, or you've noted, you've read some of what's on here by the lieutenant, and I'm saying I can only go by what the lieutenant has reported here on the quarterly performance summary.
What you talked about earlier were some warnings during his recruitment period. Is that correct?
Right, but those would not have been noted on here because the letter of warning was for 2019. This is the only last 2 years, 2021 and 2022. So it would not have been noted on here.
Right, but the notes that you did bring us with those warnings were during the recruitment period, correct?
Yes,
But they would be a part of his personnel file record, correct?
yes.
And so, this is 2019 and 2020, his performance review.
No, this quarterly performance summary is January 2021 and January 2022.
And you noted in reviewing his file that you did not see any other disciplinary records or warnings or letters of anything in his record other than what you talked about earlier, correct?
No, I would not have responded to your open records request.
No, my question is the only disciplinary issues that you see in his personnel file are those ones that you talked about earlier for lateness and tardiness in his recruitment period. Is that correct?
That's correct.
No further questions for her.
Anything else?
That concludes my questions.
Your Honor, we would, I'm sorry, Mr. Busby.
Hang on, yes, does anyone on the board have any questions for? No. Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Just before the witness leaves, I would move to introduce Exhibit 1 on behalf of.
Absolutely, without objection, we have that in our packet. Counselor, do you have anything else?
Nothing else
Okay.
on behalf of appellee. Witness.
Ms. Jeffords? Sure.
Let me just see if my witness is out here.
Counselor, how many witnesses do you have?
I think that's going to conclude for us as well.
Okay.
It is 12 o'clock, and I'm sorry I have to catch a plane today, too.
Oh, that's fine. We'll just, in light of that, does anybody have a question or anything for the, for either counsel? With that, I'll move to a close. Thank you all very much.
Just closing arguments.
Yes, exactly. Just a close real quick.
Okay, I'll just be very brief.
Sure.
And I think the administrator summed it up well. Augusta, Georgia has high standards for its employees. Here we have an admission. He admitted to doing the act. That's it. And we're going to ask that you uphold the termination. I think our witnesses were very clear here. So that concludes, that's my closing statement. I'm not going to belabor the point.
Okay.
I thank you all for your time and attention to this matter.
Thank you. Ms. Jeffords?
And I don't want to belabor the point either, and I thank you guys for your time, because this young man is here because this is his career. This is what he's put his life into, his family's here, everybody is here. He did send the text message, but it should be taken in its context as well, is that somebody asks him a question. He does not have drugs in his system. This is not the type of character that he has. His letters that I sent you, his character references show that. And then you also have to look at the violations of their own procedures. He comes in, he admits to the text, he signs a form about that. They do not, 6 months later, they say it's the end of the investigation, but the act took place. They knew that the act took place. If this was one of those cases that immediately warranted termination because you are such a vile person that it violates the ethics of this entire organization, you do not have to wait 6 months to do it. In addition to doing that, they do not, as their own procedures do lay out, you contact their captain that didn't contact Mr. Wisnick. He's at work. He comes back just out of the blue, okay. He comes back, they sit down with him, no notice of disciplinary, and I think that you guys can take notice of your own procedures in here. 300013 says you get a notice of pending disciplinary action. He doesn't get that, and let me tell you why that's important. Because people don't just move to a termination until they have actually had conversations with people that you have worked with, until somebody else could have came and advocated on his behalf during that situation. When he walked in that day, in April 22nd, he was handed a termination letter. No letter of warning, no discipline, no 3-day suspension. Other people were interviewed, involved with much more egregious stuff, and they are back at work. I don't know why they chose Mr. Bowman to be terminated for the message. Those violations, I think, is because when you look at Mr. Oates' investigation, he lines up as many as he possibly can of 5 violations. But as we went through his direct, I think that the personnel board could find that those violations simply don't exist. So you move for his termination based upon an investigation that did not establish these 5 things. And when you say that he facilitated a drug deal, I am an attorney. I know what it means to facilitate a drug deal. She requested the weed man. I still don't know, and I think it's very important for this board to know what happened with her and the others. He sent back a number. There is nothing presented to him, to this body, or any other body, that he facilitated her going to buy or do weed, and her overdose had nothing to do with weed or him at all. Yet he's losing his livelihood and his career, and a good employee that we have here, because his records don't show that he wasn't on time. His records don't show that he didn't do things, and his character references, and if you ask his boss, he would have been here. The boss should have been notified, then he could have discussed this with everybody. They just came in, they terminated him without fair due process and procedure. We're getting it here today. We appreciate you listening, but they did not establish those 5 violations and more that warranted termination for this young man. And I'm just asking that you would, A, reverse it, B, reverse it. He should have at least at the very option not have to go around with, I was fired for this after I gave you 6 more years of risking my life for you, fighting fires and doing things, 6 more months of risking my life for you, and he has to go in and say I was fired. Not a resignation, not a letter of warning, not 3 days termination, and people having sex and the police are still working. Okay. Not right. And I'm just asking you to please, Augusta has a procedure that asks for fairness and equity is about how you treat all those involved in similar situations. We want to keep people. People do make mistakes, but people who own up to the mistake of responding to an inquest from somebody else, he did that. And rather than terminating him for it, we could have learned from that, taking it, and he gave you the best that he had. There's nothing in that record other than what they just gave me today that I'd never seen before this from that FOIA request, which we'll deal with separately, that suggested he didn't give his best to Augusta and continue to do so.
In rebuttal, really quickly, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, in that council has mentioned character witness letters, I would direct your attention to Federal Rules of Evidence 404A1. Evidence of a person's character or character trait is not admissible to prove that on a particular occasion the person acted in accordance with the character or trait. So with that said, Mr. Chairman, I would object to the admission of those statements. I thought she was going to present those witnesses so that I could object at the time, but since she did not and is asking you to consider that, I would I make that.
Well, I'll note your objection.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ladies. I appreciate it. With that, I'll entertain a motion from the board to go into executive session.
So moved. Second.
I have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. We are now in executive session. Thank you very much.
And thank you.
Do you want us to hang around, sir, or?
And may I be excused at this time? Yes. Okay, thank you.
We're going to deliberate right now. All right, this time I'm going to call a motion for the Augusta Richland County Personnel Board to come out of executive session. So moved. Do I have a second? Second. All right, we are now out of executive session. So at this time, I will also entertain a motion from the board.
I make a
Rob?
motion that we overturn.
The motion is the motion to overturn the determination is on the table. I have a second from Mr. Culver. At this time, I will take a roll call vote. Ms. Rouse?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes to overturn.
All right. Mr. Riles?
Yes.
Dr. Levitt?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Culver?
Overturn.
Ms. Dunn? Yes. Yes. As chair, I'll vote yes as well. That is a unanimous to overturn. This time I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion we adjourn.
Second.
Second, without discussion, the Augusta Richland County Personnel Board is adjourned. Thank y'all very much for your attendance. I appreciate it. Thank you.